Steve. So I want to start this off with a quick poll, liven things up a little bit. We're going to do a reverse poll. So everybody raise your hands. Everybody. All right, perfect. Now, if you're a brand, you can put your hand down. Okay, so about 40%. Now, for the rest of you guys, we're going to do a little exercise. So I'm a big fan of film, and a very motivational film is Jerry Maguire. So I'm going to play the role of Rod Tidwell, played by Cuba Gooding Jr., and you guys are going to play the role of Jerry Maguire. Because this panel is about attribution, it's about money spent and money earned. So the folks that are with their hands raised, I want you to repeat after me. Show me the money.
Show me the money.
All right. That was okay, but really, come on. Show me the money.
Show me the money.
All right. I love brand people. All right, there we go. Let's get started. Attribution. So my name is David Epp. I work at BlueCross, BlueShield of Illinois, Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Montana. Actually, on top of that, it's a mouthful. We are the largest blues plan, and one of our key things is when working in digital, how do we actually attribute success? Because at the CMO level, all we really care about is how much money is being spent and how much money is being brought or saved. So we have a great line of panelists here, and I wanted to give a little time to each individual here to kind of introduce themselves and talk about what they do in attribution.
You stuck.
You know, I just realized we're wearing the same shoes.
Oh man.
This is talk about lookalike modeling, right? Case for attribution. How do they get us?
Same socks. Similar.
Similar socks.
Very similar.
He's got a camera in my room. So my name is Ryan Bonifacino, Vice President of Digital Strategy at a company called Alex and Ani. Alex and Ani named after two daughters of Carolyn Raphalian in Cranston, Rhode Island. We're known for selling single charm bangles. We make them in America out of recycled scrap metal, and call it the last 2.5 years, we've risen from 12 employees to 750 across all channels as of Monday. We are the fastest growing mid-sized retailer in America with more sales per square foot than anybody with the exception of Apple. That's us.
Cool. I am Chris Knoch, Vice President of Strategy at IgnitionOne. IgnitionOne is a digital marketing suite. It's basically a technology that takes your search, display, and social advertising channels, manages them out of one platform, and has native attribution across all these things. This isn't new to us. We've been around for nearly 10 years at this point. We have about $1.5 billion in advertising running through our platform, representing about $30 billion in revenue for our customers, and we're doing attribution for a lot of them. This is top brands like International Hotel Group, JCPenney, Apple. We work with agencies like iProspect and 360i. And I'm really excited to be on this panel because, quite frankly, attribution is something that's been near and dear to me for coming up on about 8 years now. So if we're just now talking about it per the introduction, then I feel like one heck of a pioneer, and I really I'm ready for the geek out session. So let's do it.
Hi there, my name is Jarvis Mack. I run customer success for Rocket Fuel in the customer success group. It's basically analytics, ad ops, professional services. Rocket Fuel is a real-time targeting company, a media partner across display, video, social, mobile, with a ton of major brands, 19 of the top 20 autos. Just work with a ton of premium brands, so really happy to be here as well. And in the attribution world, we basically have a pretty strong point of view on it. We are not an attribution vendor ourselves, but we work with a lot of vendors, partners like talking to Manu here and other attribution vendors about how we can utilize that information and optimize campaigns while it's happening in real time.
Hi everyone, my name is Mathew. I'm one of the co-founders of VisualIQ. Similar to Chris, we actually launched our attribution platform back in 2007. Back when only Atlas had the engagement mapping. I don't know if people remember that one. We are a pure play attribution technology provider, and we work with several brands and agencies to deliver insights on an intra-channel basis. Essentially, an example of inter would be TV to search or display to search. And on an intra-channel basis, take display as an example. What is the influence of Publisher 1 on Publisher 5, right down to the most granular, more tactical aspects of it. When we first launched the platform, it was really more about measurement, but today we've kind of gone down to the point, our philosophy is really about how you make that actionable. So how do you build tools that allow both advertisers and the agencies to really capitalize on the insights and the actions that attribution provides by sitting on top of all their data.
Great, thank you guys. Show me the money. So, one of the goals of this panel is not to just kind of go through the motions and talk typical attribution. We want controversy. So, please do share some controversial stories if you can. As a new marketer coming in, assume that I was fresh out of school and I'm working at a brand, and I'm thrown into the holiday shopping period. I'm buying display ads, I'm doing some search, some social, and I'm getting a ton of different reports. I'm getting Radian 6 for social, I'm getting Google Analytics, and I have some spreadsheets for some mobile stuff that we've done. How do you approach that? If you're to talk to this brand new junior marketer, how would you approach attribution through the myriad of reports that they get? Does anybody want to take this one?
As a retailer, we'll kick it off, I guess, over here. We're a little complicated in that, we sell to wholesale, we sell direct to consumer online, we sell direct to consumer through our retail stores. But if somebody's joining my team, they're likely coming from an analytical background. I've got a hedge fund background, so I was for 5 years I was actually raising money for some of the most quantitative funds in the world, coming out of big prop desks, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, and so on. But to answer the question, to explain to a junior team member, I would simply say, if you're talking about digital measurement, it's measuring and time stamping each brand interaction, and then assigning credit where credit's due. It gets complicated with us because we've got a wholesale business and we've also got a licensed products business where the end user, the girl that's got the stack of bangles on her arm, that's the trend. They tend to stack up. They may find us because they were at the Boston Red Sox game and they saw our name on the outfield, or they're in New York and they see a taxi cab ad that has a New York Yankees bangle that runs literally 219,000 times a day. A taxi cab ad. That's not to benefit our one store, but we don't measure it. We know it has a significant impact, but the challenge to that junior analyst is to not only take in all other channels. Somebody could stumble upon us because they're at Bloomingdale's, and we sell wholesale to Bloomingdale's all over the country. How does that impact our ability to convert that customer to an Alex and Ani, a direct-to-consumer experience? So they buy online after Bloomingdale's, or they buy in a store after they see us in the outfield at Fenway. And we have a lot of other partnerships as well beyond Major League Baseball. We've got the Olympics. We've got NFL in the pipeline. We've got NHL. We've got a charitable division called Charity by Design. We partner up with organizations like Stand Up to Cancer, and a lot of the partnerships do promote us to their organizations. So again, looking at just digital, valuing that experience, it's other people's information, so it's extremely difficult.
I'd like to answer that by asking the audience a question, another hand-raising activity, which is, by show of hands, agency, vendor, brand side, how many people are at least talking about attribution within their organizations? All right. And then of everybody, keep your hands up, everybody that's doing that, how many think that they are completely awesome at attribution? Right? And one of the things that you run into is, you kind of mentioned it. You mentioned all the different data. Your data doesn't talk to each other. You've got different vendors. We could throw up with like the Lumascape slide and show all the different solutions out there. That's crazy confusing. But I think the other thing that you run into is your organization even set up to do attribution? I think that's probably one of the hardest things to get. I've worked with brand innovators around attribution, either in search channels or display channels or social channels. They're passionate about answering that question. They're passionate about figuring out what is the relative influence. But they live in organizations where that passion isn't shared across the entire marketing channel. You have siloed teams that have different things that they're going after. They have different initiatives that they're undertaking. And I've even seen it when the entire marketing team is in lockstep. Yeah, we got to do attribution. This is the model or the vendor we want to bring in. And then finance comes in and crushes it and says, we don't believe that. We're going to stick with the last click attribution model. So like, I think the first thing you have to do is have a very honest taking stock of, is my organization set up to do this? Or is it just going to be all talk and no action 9 months from later, from now? Otherwise you're just not set up for success at that point.
David, if I can add one more thing. To your example about the holiday season, it definitely requires planning. Attribution is not just simply about installing a piece of software and assuming it all works. I think the theme you're hearing is it does require all the stakeholders to really be in alignment with each other. But on the tactical side, the example that you use, I think that one of our clients is H&R Block, and they have a very defined period in which they have to market and sell their services the first half of the first quarter of the year. When we first started working with them, it actually, we started using a very small data set, and slowly the attribution model learned as it went along, and 1 month later they had much more definable, actionable data to act on. But it does require planning in terms of figuring out what do you want to work on first. So when we typically go to a client, we look at what is your paid, earned, and owned strategy, and where do you think you can make the most impact from an actionability perspective, especially if you consider that stakeholders within the organization have to act on the output or optimize a buy or optimize certain specific keywords or whatnot. So that whole aspect of alignment is a very key part of making attribution work for the organization.
Oh, and by the way, shameless plug, we just tweeted a guide to setting up your department. It's like about 20 pages or so about that subject that we talked about. You can download it at that link. But that's probably one of the hardest challenges. And then just, like even with you guys, like when you're setting up, trying to get all your systems to talk to each other, like how do you tackle that? How does the display team talk to the search team, talk to the social team? Are they all using different systems? How do those systems talk? Can you take us through any of that?
Sure. So they don't talk to one another at this stage. We've got a very forward-thinking view on what it takes to do this, and I think it's a combination of number one, owning the data, so bringing in all the data, allowing everybody to share, and that's not speaking to internal teams. That's also speaking to partners as well. Anybody we partner up with, there's value in understanding our challenges because we don't fit into a typical box. So when you're sharing partner data with other partners, it becomes a little bit of a challenge, and that's I think where you rely. We're backed by a private equity shop, $1 billion plus shop in San Francisco called JH Partners, and you look at scenarios there at a whole new level where JH Partners has some insight on their concept with sharing data between brands, and is it ethically sound to do so? Is there a way to do so to where all sides benefit? There is, yes, but we're really talking about centralizing all of your information in one easily accessible platform by whoever's tying into that platform, and at the same time being able to benefit appropriately from the data, which goes back to talking to people who have done it before, and we're currently in that stage. So we're not doing it now. We should be, and we will be.
As a partner, we've definitely seen the challenge that Chris is talking about in getting people in lockstep, and part of it is even so the fundamental problem we're trying to solve with attribution is how do we measure success, right? For each and every partner that we're going to bring into the plan, and so as a partner that gets in part of the plan, we even see fundamental differences of opinion between, say, the agency and the client. So even getting those aligned, so maybe, for example, we had a recent example where, according to the agency, we were doing phenomenal, we were beating the competition, they loved us. Then we go to see the client had just implemented the web analytics solution, was completely about click only, and it just wanted to throw everything out the window. So how the agency was defining success to us was completely opposite from when the client actually looked at it and said, yeah, when I looked at your numbers, I just don't agree with it, and really I kind of want to turn things around completely. So it's really tough when you run into those types of situations. So it's critically important that everyone's on the same page, and that's not easy to do.
It reminds me of, if anybody's ever run into this, where you get you have your 3-4 marketing teams, and they give you all the reports on how many conversions occurred on the website, and it's like, you add them all up and it's like 500 conversions happened a day, and then you go to your finance team and it's like actually only about 300 conversions happen today. That's part of getting your like deduplicating all of your data. So a conversion is a conversion on one platform is one of those first steps. I know that's something you guys help a lot with. We do it. I mean, and then the other thing is if you are working with even a pure play attribution vendor like VisualIQ, like one of the biggest things to do is don't miss the step of tying that into your optimization platforms. Like how many times do you run into that where they silo you in some type of analytics team, and it's just kind of an interesting study and it never makes it back to the execution teams?
Yeah, that definitely is true. Often, I think one of the things we've learned over the years is, again, attribution is not just about the technology. It's really about the approach. So when you have a roadmap that's put in place, you really have to get everyone in alignment into how you're going to consume the output, how you're going to operationalize the output, so you don't run into the 500 versus 300 aspect, and because your data will never always be clean, but coming up with that good data strategy to make that happen is key. How you share data with your partners is key. Coming up with alignment on key metrics that could change from quarter to quarter, campaign to campaign is also key. So there's a lot of things that really you have to start focusing. But the fundamental part of it is making sure that your tracking strategy and your data collection strategy is one that you have kind of defined at the onset of this, because that it really defines the success of any attribution solution that you're putting forth.
That's great. So it definitely sounds like attribution or executing attribution is not really a technology issue, it's more of an organizational issue. So Chris, you mentioned you have a great white paper on that, but maybe we can dive into that a little bit more. So how does an organization need to be set up so that attribution can work within an organization?
So one of our clients last year, well, I was actually published in Ad Age last year, Vanguard, one of our more successful implementations. We've been working with them now for almost 4 years, and when we first started working with them, it was really all about how do you sort of deduplicate all your channels. It's a reporting problem, but really what sort of nailed down the success for that client was having a single sort of sponsor for attribution that ultimately became responsible for driving the operational context of adoption throughout the organization. Because one of the things as the organization gets more and more complicated, you have more business units in place, you have to understand, and all of us kind of recognize that the activity that one business unit has in market is influenced by activity from another business unit. So how do you reconcile that, and what does that actually mean from a budgeting process? Those are decisions that an attribution technology provider isn't necessarily going to answer for you. You need a stakeholder, you need a sponsor that is actually going to drive it in to the organization. And it took them probably the better part of a few quarters or then some to actually get the entire organization off of last click, and now they only deal with sort of MTA measurement to measure pretty much how all their campaigns are in market. And so that also includes their agency, in fact, in terms of how they go about designing campaigns and measuring campaigns and things like that. So that's a key part of the ownership.
Yeah, I mean, you said sponsor, but let me make this very key and clear. When I've seen it be successful, you have VP of online or even CMO level buy-in and vision for implementing something other than last click. Absent that, even if you have an internal kind of business owner that is passionate about it, wants to fix this problem, they just like they're going into one team, like they're going to go to the display team, and it falls like number 5 on their priority list. They're just not going to get the attention to move it along as quickly as it has to happen. So you need to sell it in potentially to the C-suite that it is a priority, that this is going to give lifts. Again, because you said it, the technology's been out there. I feel like we're finally talking about the technology. You know, I was at Omniture for 5 years, and it was all we talked about, in our marketing teams. But getting people to implement it, you need executive air cover at the end of the day in order to make this happen in a lot of cases.
Because when you don't, what ends up happening if you have the separate e-commerce team that's not tied to the media team, because there's a lot of testing and learning and experimenting and moving around with media partners and moving around media investments, you can be shifting things around to analyze the outputs at the end of the day. So if you don't have the freedom as someone who's going to be charged as the evangelist to move pieces around to see what the investments produce at the end of the day, if you don't have the buy-in from the top, you run into those hurdles. You just can't make those moves. And we've certainly seen in our own case, this test that we were running, they couldn't get away from the last click because, exactly, finance came in at the last second and said, no, what are you guys doing? Don't go dark right now. You're disrupting our revenue. So no, you have to stay alive, and then you just have to add in this other media partner at this point in time. You can't start a fresh, clean test. So I've absolutely seen that in practice.
With us, we're a separate digital team that kind of functions with its own e-commerce P&L, but also there's a kind of a horizontal, shared service component. We believe that it has to come from the marketing side. It has to come from a CMO, as opposed to somebody from the technical side trying to explain attribution for the first time. It's important to have the marketers discover it through events like this, and investigate and due diligence. And I can't really speak to the B2B side, but I got to imagine you mentioned the kind of the guide that you put up there. Comes back to tag management. I think is an important piece to reference. For the first time, marketers are grasping the concept of tag management, not just sending the instructions to IT. So when we look at the post you put up, I'm assuming there's some sort of tag associated with it, and you've identified anybody that clicks within this session, whether it's through the actual click or you're geolocating or whatever the case. You're identifying this as a first impression in some cases. These are all leads, right? And you're watching how.
So you're saying the NSA should hire us for Prism? That's what you're
exactly
saying.
what I'm saying.
It's fantastic. So let's shift gears a little bit. I think I am actually a mobile and emerging marketing guy, and about a month ago, I was in a LinkedIn group and I was chatting with Gene Keenan, formerly of Isobar, and I think he's working with Four Seasons Hotel right now. And we were exchanging notes back and forth, basically saying that complete attribution or a clear vision of attribution, executing attribution, is extremely difficult because there is no single platform or solution out there, at least to my knowledge or his knowledge. So how does a brand attribute success of a campaign across mobile, social, web, et cetera, et cetera?
I think one of the things to do is to be comfortable using better data than like trying to just find perfect data. It always kind of amuses me that marketers have been comfortable, especially in the offline world, for a very long time using sample data to drive their decision making. Yet in the online world, it has to be tracked almost like an accounting system in order for you to get buy-in to make your advertising buys that in many cases are still a minority of the spend versus the offline buys. So that's always been a very frustrating thing. So I think to answer your question, it is get better data, take action on it, and if you see improvement, keep using it and keep trying to make your data better. It's an iterative process that doesn't stop.
So yeah, I completely agree with that. I think typically what we try to advise clients is try not to eat the elephant in one bite. Take little pieces because it's really a journey. Now I understand that typically sometimes there are critical campaigns that need to be tracked and whatnot, but this does require some planning. We tackle attribution both online, digital, interactive, but then also have the ability to pull in your offline channels as well. Now the thing to recognize is even for things like mobile, you really can't track every single user interaction with your brand and the impact of it. You may have some level of overlap, but what do you do with the remaining 60% that you can't track? At the end of the day, the data strategy you put in place will be directionally better or better than what you already had. But when you account for things like offline influence on your digital spend, it's really more of a planning exercise or budgeting exercise that influences what you can do with your money or your spend in the next half of the year, the next quarter, to impact a specific objective. But if the data exists and we can track it down to a given user, part of how our attribution stack works is we recreate every single touch point that the customers had with the brand or the channel, both converter and non-converter data. And once you have that, you literally are sitting on a gold mine of stuff, but that's not all of it, right? Just because I can recreate a journey that a customer had with your brand doesn't mean it's always actionable. So you have to balance that aspect of it, which is really tied to how much can I influence from a buy perspective, how much can I influence by understanding those touch points. Retention data, for example, you could influence it. I could influence how many direct mail pieces you use and when the call center guys call you. You can actually control that. But on the other side, when you're trying to gain a new audience, you don't always have control over what they do and when they see it and how they interact with it.
Yeah, another thing that I've seen some organizations do is do side-by-side attribution, which is essentially you have two attribution profiles running at the same time off of the data. It's relatively sophisticated to create that kind of platform, but when you do have that capability, essentially what you do is you have your marketing engines optimizing the spend off of an attribution model that's more sophisticated, that didn't have to maybe be sold into the finance team, but then you have the ability to still report on last click into the finance team or out to the CEO and just know that the numbers are still rising, but you have the ability to show the data in different ways to people that, quite frankly, sometimes they're not even ready for that kind of conversation.
I think part of the answer for trying to put together all the different pieces that could potentially be influencing a campaign is the level of actionability that you want from having that information. So are you going to be able to optimize, what pieces can you optimize within the campaign versus just maybe season to season or looking at overall marketing investments, right? So to Chris's earlier point, when we think about offline, we look at media investments from an econometric modeling, media mix modeling perspective at a high level. You're thinking about your overall media mix. So if you can't do that at a very specific campaign level, but you know that you used a great deal of social and there's a specific things that you did here that is unique to this campaign, then do you use that for the next campaign? Are you going to be able to optimize it within the campaign? Probably not. But is it worth doing again? You have to do it in retrospect. So the level of actionability is more at that media mix marketing investment level for the next time around that you want to go and do that. Now, another way of looking at it as well is, you're starting to talk about side-by-side comparisons, which just leads to the, natural A/B testing, right? So can you split it equally in half, and have you exposed this piece to certain elements that you didn't expose to the other piece so you can keep it clean and look at the overall lift generated by those components that were in one half, not the other?
Yeah, I think as a brand, we're, to use the Jerry Maguire reference, we're still a bit cynical. The industry is so new. It's been around obviously for a while, but as far as the players are concerned, there's a lot of independent players, and we like to do a lot of speculation, a lot of M&A speculation. Who's going to be snapped up by who, and if you feel Oracle's gonna snap up VisualIQ, do you want to be an Oracle company? So we have fun in that world, and that's we run our team like investment bankers, doing the right analysis and kind of cross-referencing the client base. But getting back to kind of the if we were selling online, it would be very easy. We are, but if we were just an e-tailer, it'd be a piece of cake. The challenge for us, I'm going back to an example where our CEO is a military guy, and he's very tactical in the way he looks at marketing, traditional marketing, digital, and so on. He actually ran United States Central Command, which was like the NASA mission control for all the wars in the Middle East. But we look at like our retail presence is concentrated in New England. We've got 30 stores, but we wanted to look at a wholesale play with Belk in the Southeast, and we're in discussions with Belk on how exactly to do that. But to get to Belk, we realized Belk was headquartered in Charlotte, I believe, and we don't have a lot of customers in Charlotte. But we ramped up spending on the radio just in morning drive times to make sure that the executives listen to us, our ads on the way into work and on the way out of work. So how do you apply an attribution model to not only that in terms of getting the business, but as it relates to channel conflict and funnel it all the way down to looking at giving credit to getting the deal with Belk to following the journey from a Belk customer online or store over onto our stores or even to other wholesalers or our online store or social media. So it gets pretty challenging, and we're going to be pretty critical of all the firms that do want to approach us and attempt to do exactly what it is we need them to do.
I think you're looking for people to say we can't do that at some point. Reminds me of a conversation I had. We were working with like somebody in the automotive space, and we were helping him put together a digital plan. And one of the things that we suggested, there's a new platform to basically measure impressions when you're filling up gas. Everybody's seen like the little display ads. And they're like, so this is fit into your attribution platform? And we're like, not really. This is like another way to get eyeballs. Yeah, we could find some way to maybe shove the data in there, but it's not perfect. And I think to your point, it's like, if anybody's acting like, yeah, we can figure this all out, it's all perfect, that's like your BS detector should be going off like crazy at that point.
Yeah, we approach it like we're like a VC at this point. Like we're actually looking at adjusting a company's business model to suit our needs, and we're acting like we have a stake in the company when we have these conversations, because we ultimately do want to have a new company or a company that's approaching us for the first time truly adjust their model to meet our requirements. So we're again very critical of the business, and we're big supporters. There's just we feel there's so much money to be made online. And we'll be there. We're preparing right now for the holidays, but to get the full offering, it's going to be a lot of face time. We're talking about months and months of planning and adjusting these models.
So the way we see it as a vendor, and we got nothing to do with Oracle just yet, it's really about the opportunity as a brand. What do you have? What are you not measuring, and how much are you leaving on the table? Because what you should expect is that your paid media is not as efficient as you think it is. We have 66 plus clients. Pretty much across the board, we see efficiency gains anywhere from, well, actually not efficiency gain, wasted spend anywhere from about 10% upwards of about 35, 37%. So the real question is, absolutely, there's no perfect vendor that's going to get you from point A to point Z in overnight or solve every single problem. But if you can etch away at that opportunity, how much is it really worth the business? Because it has two components to it. One is gaining back some of that spend, but then you can also make that spend work for you in terms of driving better, higher quality conversions or whatever your objective is. There's really twofold benefit at a macro level, certainly, that as a brand you should expect from an attribution platform.
Fantastic. So if I were to have one takeaway from this whole conversation, it sounds like if you want to do attribution well, get the CMO to be the champion. Engage the CTO, engage the CFO, and ultimately make sure that you have the CEO on board. Would you guys agree?
If that's possible. I mean, obviously, if you're at a 100,000 person company, that's almost insurmountable. It's basically, you could even level it down, I think, to the VP of online, but you do need executive buy-in and air cover to make it happen. I would agree with that.
I think part of that journey in terms of getting the buy-in is knowing that a full-fledged attribution model is at one end of the spectrum, and you've got last touch at the other end of the spectrum, and that you have to get a bunch of people into the intermediate steps, that knowing, okay, last touch is inherently flawed. How do we move away from that? How do we get people to buy in that there's, because they may view full-fledged attribution as black box, they just don't understand, so they're not willing to buy into that because they don't understand these models, they haven't vetted them out, so that's just, we just can't accept that. So we're not going to go there. But there's an intermediate step of, we know what we use for lower funnel. We know we use search, affiliates, retargeting. We know there's a number of vehicles there that we do that for. We know we use other vehicles primarily for upper funnel branding. Can we agree that we use upper funnel and we measure these metrics, that those metrics directly feed in and enhance and augment what we do at the lower funnel, so as a whole we can evaluate the program holistically? So can we agree and can we generate consensus in the marketing org around those concepts and how to measure success for each of those partners at different stages of the funnel? I think even that, there's a big challenge there, and agencies and their end customers are not sometimes always aligned on those things. But I think that's an eminently achievable goal on the way to moving to a full-fledged attribute. It's the concept of moving away from, okay, let's just measure in this way because this is the way we've always done it, to this stage that is a smarter way versus this full-fledged way, which seems somewhat mysterious and they don't quite understand.
I think that you got to look at the time it really takes to get buy-in. And if you were actually the person that was getting the buy-in at the C level and working with the structure with the partner and how to set it up and bringing all parties together to do the actual execution, you're talking about wasting a lot of time. And take the example of call it just the rise of the chief digital officer. Having somebody that sits in the C-suite to not argue, but educate. Educate the CFO. If your CMO is more traditional, then you got to have a separate C level to do just that, while your team is actually hard at work trying to be ahead of the curve here. If your CMO wears both hats, then it's the CMO's job, and you've got an execution team underneath the CEO or CMO rather to actually get it done. Otherwise, you're missing a lot. The amount of money you're leaving on the table right now, I look at it in terms of retail. We've got to have it done before the holidays. The amount of money that we either save and make is 10 times the cost of what it takes for a chief digital officer.
I don't lose track of the psychology of who you're talking to at every time is the other thing, where, you mentioned partners. Sometimes we work with brands who are all fired up to work with us, and then one of their partners, just their psychology is, this is going to complicate our lives, so they basically start throwing, sticks in the spokes of your wheel. They're trying to trip you up. Or like another thing, attribution models is a huge threat to a search team. Search teams are just gobbling up all the last click conversions. They are almost across the board disproportionately credited the conversions. So if I'm a search person and I'm responsible for the search budget, why do I want an attribution profile implemented in my organization if I'm a selfish person? And that's what I mean. What is the psychology? What is motivating the people that you're talking to about this? Because what we're talking about is disrupting reporting. We're talking about disrupting communication channels. This is a very disruptive process to implement attribution.
You'll create battles. People are emotionally invested into their functional areas. You don't want a battle. You want to be able to educate everybody at one time and show people that they do have jobs at the end of this play if they participate early on. You're not depleting your search team. You're making the search team more valuable.
So one thing to add, it also just comes down to results. If you look at attribution purely as a measurement problem, it is tough to get adoption across the board. If I go back to the Vanguard example, one of the reasons why there's such a success, initially there was a sponsor who really drove both the agency and us to just show me the money. And after a successful set of runs in terms of utilizing the output of the attribution system, he then went and invited the CFO and the CEO, and guess what? As an organization now, they're pretty much aligned behind MTA. So it just comes down to approaching it in an iterative fashion and understanding what methodology and approach works for your organization is not going to be the same as the other organization, and then putting in plan in place that will drive that adoption in partnership with your vendors and partners.
So bringing together Manu's comments as well as Chris's comments, it is a disruptive process, but if you are able to activate the output from an attribution system, know that there is sufficient contribution from those upper funnel initiatives that ultimately, for that search team, it's going to be not just lower cost per lead, but it's higher volume, right? What I think about is we're augmenting those DR lower funnel efforts.
It's not only augmenting, we stumbled onto attribution 7 years ago, kind of what you're talking about. We were working with one of the biggest low-cost insurance providers out there. They had a massive display budget, a massive search budget. They had a new digital person came in and just hacked away at the display budget, and the search budget crashed. Because what's really happening, what you're getting at is display in a lot of cases creates demand that is fulfilled by search, right? So if, to your point about getting search teams more vested in that their job's going to be their job's going to be more exciting because they're going to have more demand to fulfill if more awareness is raised through smarter display budgets.
That's such a great point.
All right, so I actually just heard some stomachs growling, and I know that we're holding people back from lunch.
Sorry.
So there is an attribution roundtable, I think, right after this, so we can continue the conversation there. And I want to thank the panelists for joining the conversation. Hopefully we will be able to find the Quan of attribution soon. So,
Thanks, David. Thanks, panel.